first time, maybe forever, you're scared.
If you thought Tulsa King was just going to keep riding the same wave of swagger, humor, and smooth-talking gangster charm, Season 3 is here to tell you otherwise. By the time Episode 2 wraps up, it's clear this show is heading into a much darker, more dangerous, and more unpredictable direction than anything we've seen before. The stakes are higher, the characters are facing real threats, and Dwight's world is starting to look a lot less like a feel-good gangster fantasy and more like a bloody chess game, where every move can cost you something you can't afford to lose. That's the energy that runs through Season 3, Episode 2, and is one of the reasons fans are buzzing about how this season is shaping up to be the best yet. Today, we're breaking down why Tulsa King Season 3 is still heading in the right direction, what's happening with Dwight, Garrett Hedlund's character, and the rest of the supporting cast, and why the rise of Dunmire as a villain is setting the stage for a collision that could finally crack Dwight's armor in ways we've never seen before. One of the first things you notice in this episode is that Tulsa King is really leaning into its darker side, and that shift is absolutely deliberate. Sure, you still have moments of levity, especially from Dwight's ragtag gang of misfits who bring that slice of comic relief, but the tone is changing. The series isn't trying to be the dad show gangster comfort food anymore. This is grittier, scarier, and meant to rattle you just enough to remind you that Dwight's world has always been brutal, even if his charisma made it feel lighter in the past. What's interesting is how the writers balance that change without completely abandoning the heart of what makes this show entertaining. They don't just turn it into a bleak crime saga. Instead, they keep the swagger, but surround it with fire. Let's talk about Garrett Hedlund's character, because Episode 2 puts him squarely in the spotlight in a way that feels almost co-protagonist level. In earlier seasons, he was important, but here, the story is deliberately shifting some of that focus toward him. Not only does he get a love interest in Cleo, which humanizes him and gives him a different kind of dimension, but he also gets one of the most raw, visceral fight scenes we've seen so far in Tulsa King. The bare-knuckle brawl is brutal, personal, and it sends a clear message that this character isn't just a sidekick anymore. He's a force to be reckoned with, and his arc is going to matter as much as Dwight's. Giving him that spotlight makes the show feel less like a one-man story and more like an ensemble where every piece of the puzzle matters. Now, one of the things that still makes Tulsa King unique is the way it handles supporting characters. Dwight's crew isn't the most polished bunch. They're quirky, messy, sometimes unreliable, but they add texture to the world. In this episode, their contributions may be fewer, but they still remind us why they're important. What's more notable, though, is how the show is finally giving Dwight's sister, Joanne, a bigger role. In earlier seasons, she was kind of off to the side, running her weed shop and occasionally popping in with some comic relief, like those infamous baked goods in Season 2. But now, she's getting more entangled in Dwight's business, and that makes her not just a background figure, but someone whose choices and vulnerabilities could have real consequences down the line. And speaking of vulnerabilities, Tina, Dwight's daughter, is still a piece on the board that cannot be ignored. The writers are making it increasingly clear that while Tina herself may not be driving the action, she represents Dwight's biggest weakness. If his enemies really want to hurt him, she's the pressure point they can push, and Episode 2 reinforces that sense of looming danger. Every time she appears, you get the sense that it's not just about family bonding. It's about raising the stakes, showing that Dwight isn't bulletproof because there are people he loves who can be used against him. The shift in tone, though, is best embodied in the rise of Dunmire as a villain. If you compare him to Ming from Season 2, Ming was violent, sure, but he was more like a chaotic wild card who just enjoyed killing people. Dunmire, on the other hand, is calculated, ideological, and rooted in a warped sense of honor that makes him far more dangerous. He believes he's entitled to things he doesn't deserve, and that sense of entitlement makes him unpredictable. He doesn't just want to beat Dwight. He wants to destroy him on a personal level, to unravel his life, burn his bridges, and prove a point about who holds real power. That's what makes him scarier. He's not just another gangster. He's a mirror of everything Dwight pretends he's not. And that sets up a showdown that could truly change the direction of this series. Episode 2 makes it abundantly clear that Dwight and Dunmire are officially at war. Both of them are threatening to destroy each other's lives, and both of them are perfectly willing to put loved ones in the crossfire. The gloves are off. For 2 seasons, Dwight has managed to navigate every situation with charm, bravado, and the kind of good fortune that always seemed to land him back on his feet. But now, that confidence might actually become his Achilles heel. Dunmire doesn't play by the same rules. He talks about honor, but his version of honor is twisted. It's not about fairness, it's about domination. He doesn't respect boundaries, he doesn't hesitate, and he's willing to go farther than Dwight has ever gone. That moment where Dwight looks at Theo's burned down house and mutters, "Man, I've made some threats in my life, but it was just idle bullshit." This is sick. Perfectly sums up the difference between these two men. Dwight has always been a talker, a deal maker, someone who intimidates with words and posture. But here he's realizing he's up against someone who isn't just posturing. Dunmire will actually follow through on the threats, no matter how extreme. That realization is what makes episode 2 so impactful. It's not just about plot progression. It's about forcing Dwight to see that his old way of handling enemies might not work anymore. And this is where the brilliance of season 3 lies. It's not just about giving fans more of the same. It's about evolution. The darker tone, the bigger spotlight on characters like Garrett Hedlund's, the deeper integration of supporting roles like Joanne and Tina, and the introduction of a villain who feels genuinely terrifying. All of this pushes the show into uncharted territory. Yes, you still have to suspend your disbelief for certain story elements, like how the Montague housefire is brushed off as an accident instead of triggering a massive law enforcement investigation. But that's not really the point of Tulsa King. It was never meant to be a gritty police procedural. It's a gangster saga, a character-driven story about power, family, and survival. And episode 2 proves that the show knows exactly what it is and where it's going. Prime Video's Reacher is a great comparison here because it's another series that leaned into a darker, heightened direction in its later seasons while still staying true to what made it popular. Tulsa King is doing the same thing. It's not losing its swagger, but it's amplifying the danger, the violence, and the consequences. That's what makes it so addictive right now. So where does this leave us? Episode 2 is a turning point. Dwight is realizing he's not invincible. His enemies are smarter, crueler, and more relentless than before. His allies are stepping up, but they're also exposing him to new vulnerabilities. And Dunmire isn't just another name on the list of rivals Dwight can outwit. He's a genuine monster whose warped sense of justice could finally shatter Dwight's confidence for good. Tulsa King Season 3, Episode 2 isn't just continuing the story, it's raising the bar. It's reminding us that for every moment of charm and bravado, there's a cost, and Dwight is about to start paying it. And if this is just the second episode, then you can bet the rest of this season is going to take us into even darker, bloodier, and more intense territory than anyone expected. Strap in, because Tulsa King is no longer just a fun gangster ride. It's becoming a war, and in this war, no one is untouchable.
I'm not the type of man that you want to fuck with.
We have that in common.